Welcome back to Ataireachd. This is the fourth and last installment of Ataireachd Àrd by Ataireachd. And in this final installment, we're going to delve a little bit deeper into the poetry of the piece and look at the rhyming scheme and how the poetry is knit together. This is going to be an important thing for many, many songs that you're going to learn, mostly because the poetry is there certainly to have a structure behind the song, but it also tells us a lot about what was intended in terms of delivery, pronunciation, word choice, and that kind of thing. Sometimes you'll see that in songs, what the author chooses to rhyme together in lines will tell you whether or not you take one particular pronunciation of a word versus another. We have many words in Gaelic. The EU words, for example, F-E-U are fiad, that can also be fair, and giar and gair, and those kinds of choices. And depending on the word choice and the rhyming scheme that the author has picked, it tells us how we're supposed to go for pronunciation. But above and beyond that, it also gives us a little bit of the rhythm of the song. Sometimes it can tell us how fast the song really ought to be sung. Very often the content of the words, the theme of the poetry is telling us how fast it should go. So we pay attention to all of that. If you pay as much attention as you can to the poetry and how the author has structured it, you really start to discover what's going on and what was in the mind of the composer when he wrote this. So we'll do a little bit of that. Now, as we've talked about this song and as we've gone through the translation, there's not a lot of happy, joyful theme to this song. So it's going to be solemn. It's going to be sung in a very respectful way. Certainly not at a dirge pace, but it's not going to move along. You won't turn this into a walking song, for example, and rev it up. You want to keep the pace thoughtful, contemplative, sad, and so on. But let's just take each one of these verses one by one and look at the rhyming scheme, but also one of the things to pay attention to as you're singing, when you put stress on words and when you're putting stress in a line to keep the beat and to keep the flow, you want to pick out the words that are key, the words that are important, that the author selected, that he chose. Each of these authors had a marvelous vocabulary, and for them to make particular word choice selections in the piece is significant. Sometimes it's significant because, as you can see, it rhymes with the other words, but in other cases, the choice of words is quite significant, and we should pay attention to that as well. But Ataireachd Àrd, ua words are fairly strong usually. Buan is a very loaded term. Everlasting, that's pretty important. But then we also see we have an internal rhyming scheme, fuaim. So buan and fuaim go together. So it tells us that these are going to be words that get a little bit of oomph, they get a little bit of attention. And Ataireachd is not that it's insignificant, but we know what we're talking about. We know what the subject is. If you're going to punch the line, I think the punch comes in a little bit more on vuan here. Ataireachd cloin fuaim na Ataireachd Àrd. So fuaim gets a little bit of a punch. Na Ataireachd, you'll certainly put some feeling behind that. Art is going to be another important word to get a little bit of stress, maybe a little bit more stress than Ataireachd Àrd, because it's a qualifier. Art has that nice long A there, and you want to create a kind of a soaring sensation. Ataireachd Àrd mar chólas. So choin chólas. We get both those uas in there. So there's our rhyming scheme. Ataireachd Àrd mar chólas lem sedam fast. And we can start to see a rhythm building here. Ataireachd bhuan klein foim na Ataireachd Àrd. Ataireachd Àrd mar chólas lem sedam fast. So it's a bit of a waltz beat, but we certainly are starting to get an idea of which words we should be highlighting. Chólas lem sedam fast. Gun vuhu gun thruas. Here we have ua again, and sluashrig ganyev natrad. The nouns in here, vuhug, muhug, and ganyev, they're certainly important. They're not fitting quite into the beat. Vuhug is, ganyev is not. So you know, of course, when we're talking about the beach, ganyev is. It's not that it's assumed, but it is kind of almost secondary in the grand scheme of things of the poetry. So we're seeing a bunch of ua words. In the second verse, we see that as well. Same rhyming scheme, and the rhyming scheme and the emphasis that we put on the words is giving us this ebb and flow. And curiously enough, because this is about the high surge of the sea, you can start to feel, if you say the lines with that little bit of emphasis and a little bit of rhythm, you start to feel the ebb and flow of the sea, and that is exactly as the author intended. Let's go on to the second verse. Gach wat leestur kol luash gach faramach ban. Na chavek gu cruai she gruamach dorsroch gan ska. Ach strich giel luas ek bruich na huya vekach. Maar huchelens luag va uad sa vale sa tav. Same rhyming scheme, and the rhyming scheme and the important words, or the critical words, still line up in the same sort of way. So the author is kind of telling us how he would like us to recite, and then after we learn the tune, sing it. Now we move on to the third verse, and he's picked a different sound for his rhyming scheme. Ia. We have ia. So Sdakailchin Ashiad, and be careful that the I gets the stress. You don't want to say shad. Shiad, shiad. Chaniaring fodoch gubrach. So shiad, iaring, we see that internal rhyme. Shiad is going to be a powerful word because it's what he doesn't want very strongly. Iaring is right from the heart, what you want and desire. Fodoch gubrach, ever. And we're seeing that same pattern. The kaintjana shir emphasis, chaniaring emphasis, fodoch gubrach emphasis. Vaminchins mavian, emphasis on both those nouns. Ariav, erlokan navai. So again, we have vian, ariav, beautiful rhyming there. Ach iatsan va fial and griav and kachtra sanag. Great rhyming scheme, fial, griav. Skachpe gunjian mariaulus yalpin ronav. IA sounds in there. Griav, and then gian, riaulus. So So we're consistently giving us the right sounds and the right words, and it's all knitting together. But also, now that we've done two, we can look at the the even lines in each of these, and notice that the author has also given us a long A sound in each of those. Brach. That often comes out as a long A sound as well. You want to be careful not to sing it too long, but we got some, we do have some leeway there. By, ag, nav. So again, long A sounds, good strong held A sounds. So that also helps with the rhythm because of the length of the A and how it fits into the rhyming scheme. Then in the next one, Shenach is luached, kluar and murren is star. We're back to the ua rhyming sounds. Tachkeg nam fuaren and duad mi imig joch fach. Now fuad, huad, is not necessarily a word that you think would be stressed, but it's important. It becomes important, and he's telling us it is important to him because of where he's placed it. Natochtigen fuad, that's a powerful word, the cold ruins. Le boagelens kushakambar. Boagelen, it's there for the rhyming scheme. It's important because of it's a description, as we've gone through the translation of the weeds and the vegetation that have choked off the life of the town. Not particularly important compared to Kushak, but we just flow with it. We just let the rhyming scheme be the rhyming scheme, and continue that ebb and flow of the song. Bar is certainly important because it gives you the image of really how bad the infestation of the vegetation is. Just continuing that rhyming scheme. Ach shuli mi uat charlosh mi teyig natral. Hamush is man nuag tort loy gurit mola. Nuag loy. Zijn naam vi sointjem fuachs en katelavash. Malepi gen suas rifuim na Ataireachd Àrd. So very consistent and beautifully put together. We can start to see some of the mood and some of the thought behind his word choice. Certainly, he's got to pick some of these words for the rhyming scheme, but Ataireachd Àrd, these are all words that we need to pay attention to because they're the words through which the author is giving us feeling. So thinking about those, what does it mean that the swell of the ocean is high? It calls to mind a violent, stormy ocean, perhaps one that's not calm or one that's not safe, perhaps. And he certainly is not calm. His emotions, thinking about how the Isle of Lewis and his town has been emptied, it's not a passive and not a peaceful feeling. So there's a little bit of room, I think, in here for some anger. There's room in here for him to be outraged at what has happened to his people. That could come through in your interpretation of the song. He's certainly using very strong words. Faramach, kavak, gruamach, striki, cheuchel. And then praising the people. Mavina riever wakanavai, ietsam va field and griev and katrav sanag. This is a beautiful picture. This is one a verse perhaps of praise and maybe a little bit of longing at the very end because of who he has lost and the people who've been scattered. But right in the middle here, where he's praising the people and praising the land, is that there's room here for some lightness and happiness and ease from the very strong emotions of the rest of it. So you can pull that into consideration for how you sing this. Taachd is just such a powerful word, choking. So that's something that you can and should use. So thinking about that, think about the words that you're going to pull out of here and pull the emotions out with the words and the word choices. So plenty of room here for interpretation and thoughts, but this is kind of the process that you want to use. The poetry, how it's structured, are going to give us clues. Word choice is going to give us clues. It's all there. It's all in the poetry. And as you might guess, if your Gaelic is at a point where you're learning the words and you're trying to improve, this is a great song to feature and allow you to pay attention to the words that contain the two vowels U and A, ua. You really can't get through this song without a good delivery of ua, vuan, fuaim, huain, hualus, truas, sluashrig, vuan. This is really great practice for that particularly Gaelic sound. There's not a lot of that kind of sound in many other languages at all, if at all. This is a particularly Gaelic sound, so this would be a great song to learn, if nothing else, because it's a beautiful song, for the way that it will help you with your Gaelic. So that is our next installment, and actually the last installment in terms of analysis of the poetry. We'll be doing this again with more songs. I certainly hope that you've enjoyed this and gotten something out of it, and we will potentially be following up with some pointers on delivery and performance, and take this study of the poetry to the next step to begin singing. But until then, enjoy your Gaelic song and singing, and we'll see you soon.